Let's dive in.
Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat but swallow a camel. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside also will be cleaned. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You build tombs for the prophets and decorate the graves of the righteous. And you say, if we had lived in the days of our ancestors, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. So you testify against yourselves that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Go ahead then and complete what your ancestors started. You snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell? Therefore, I am sending you prophets and sages and teachers. Some of them you will kill and crucify. Others you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town. And so upon you will come all the righteous blood that has been shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Truly, I tell you, all this will come on this generation. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. Look, your house is left to you desolate, for I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
Right. And you know what? I love what she said at the end of that. When you read this, when you think about what's being said to who? The religious people.
Now he said, what would Jesus do?
It's like when you read what has been said of those who know a bit, the Bible studiers, right? So what did or what would Jesus do? Jesus tore them up. And he's like, you're not fooling me. I can see right through you. And I think, I'm going to, he'll probably have to edit this out. But I think in this respect, the Salvation Army has one unique characterization that you don't always see in other churches, which is the uniform. So to the extent that one puts on and wears the uniform out in public, whether you are a pastor, because, like in other denominations, you can't just put on a collar and run around, right? They'll get you. But in the Salvation Army, everybody has something that closely identifies them with this church, with this moving army of salvation. And so the at least when I went through soldiership class, the uniform is supposed to represent something. It's supposed to speak something about who you are, yes, independent of you opening your mouth. And not just that, it does have a little bit of rules. Addington has told me how John has told him, tunic on, tunic button, or tunic not on at all. Is that right?
Close to that, yeah.
Right. But it's like, in other words, you can't just wear this any way you want to.
Yeah, you wear it, but you don't say the wrong things.
So the point that I'm making here is that when you have it on and you step forward out into a more public forum, the people should be able to make certain assumptions about who you are.
What airline you with?
Right? Right. You know, heaven bound. We work for heaven bound. Okay? They should be able to make certain assumptions about your beliefs. There are some doctrines that are a part of the Salvation Army, and so we don't think you should be believing this thing over here, because there's some things that go over there, independent of you opening your mouth. I used to tease Addington, poor thing. I don't know how he's put up with me for 20-something years. But I used to tease him. We used to go to this Indian restaurant on the way home from church many years ago when our boys were little. And he was still wearing the uniform all the time then. And I used to, then we finally started going, getting carrying out, I would send him in. I would say, okay, Mr. Salvationist, don't come out till everybody in there is saved.
How did you do, Addie?
Right. But he would step forward in the uniform. He's going into this place. It's like, you come with the gospel. Don't come back out here till everybody in there is saved. Okay. And, you know, maybe a tongue in cheek, but it always is nice to share it should the Lord open up the opportunity for you to share. I say that to say the following. The Pharisees probably didn't start off bad. They just got naughty. Because who are they? I'm going to read from the commentary just to give some background on who they are. The Pharisees were one of several Jewish sects that existed during the times of Jesus, alongside the Sadducees, the Essenes, and the Zealots. And they played a significant role, listen, in shaping the religious life of first century Jews. They played a significant role in shaping the life. So today, who plays a significant role in shaping the life of Christians?
Jesus.
Well, obviously the Lord does. Who else? I'm sitting here right now holding the commentary book reading to you, right? So the teachers, the parents, the pastor, the people you mentor and disciple. You know, Joel shared a few weeks ago of how somebody was struggling and he called him or they called them or whatever it was, and he was guiding him and saying, man, don't do it, or be careful, or get here. He's shaping the religious life. So those who know are those who should be influencing and shaping. And so even though we don't want to call ourselves the Pharisees, because there's some not great connotations along with that, I want us to at least equate ourselves with those who are helping to influence, shape, guide, teach those who are in the kingdom of God. That's everybody in this room. Because I said they didn't start off naughty. They got there. Okay. Their name Pharisee likely comes from the Hebrew root meaning to separate or set apart. Well, that's consistent with our call. Because the Bible says, come out from among them and be separate.
Yes.
Reflecting their commitment to ritual purity and strict adherence to the Torah. Okay? It says that the Pharisees were more connected to the Jewish life in the local synagogues, the everyday Jewish life. The Sadducees were more in line with the priestly caste. But we're talking about the Pharisees right now. They were lay leaders, often from middle-class backgrounds, who were passionate about teaching and interpreting the Torah. And then it says they represented a grassroots religious movement to preserve Jewish identity in the face of external pressures. How about this? Their teaching emphasized that holiness was not confined to the temple or the priesthood, but was something all Jews could aspire to. Are we not teaching holiness? Is this not a holiness denomination? Yes?
So for geographical perspective, if you think of the Pharisees as outside of Jerusalem, then they're helping to preserve the traditions outside of the temple area, where
Yes.
the Sadducees are a temple-based group. They are more rural and exurbiant.
Excellent. But they believe in come out from among them and be separate, as we are also called. And they believe in holiness, as we are also called. And they believe that holiness is for today, even back in their day. Now, it says ritual holiness because they don't have the same thing that we have, which is the Holy Spirit living within us. So it's a little bit different. But the idea of being able to be blameless or seek holiness to the best of their understanding would have been part of how they approach life until they started getting naughty. I say that because if we're not careful, we can get naughty too. We can get so naughty so quick, so judgy, so not good. We got to be careful, folks. Yes, John?
In feeding that judgy motif that you're talking about, when you ask about the influences on our present-day lives, I think of the constant pressures of social media, of the 24/7 news. I don't know if you listen to Fox or if you listen to the Young Turks, but that is influencing your perception on the world. And I don't mean to dwell on anything, but, Christian nationalism, et cetera, et cetera, I think we're just as guilty as the Pharisees as we align ourselves with certain networks or narratives or trains of thoughts or our algorithms shape, what we're, I think there's plenty of influences other than those that we assume are our mentors and our teachers.
Love that.
Well said.
Now, one of the things that Addington and I have done, that's just us. We don't have TV. We're not on social media. You'd be hard pressed to find me on the internet, except as it relates to Oakland University. So we've kind of taken this, so I don't like that influencing me. I don't want to hear it. So Cynthia, try to drown out those voices with just this word. That's me. I'm who I am.
You're really productive then.
I don't know. But I'm just saying that his point is so
Yeah.
exceptionally well taken because you may not even realize how these things are seeping in, how these thoughts, how these sounds good but not God. Can I say it again? How these sound good but not God is creeping and seeping in and then influencing the way you see, perceive your context. Yes.
Well, those are false teachers. The fact that there are so many different opinions about the same thing that, it's hard to be discerning.
And I think that's what the key word is, discern. But noise flies in the face of discernment. Because to be able to discern, you must hear the Spirit of the living God when He's speaking to you. And noise flies in the face of being able to hear a still small voice.
I will add that it's going to get worse because of this thing called artificial intelligence.
Oh, yeah.
We produce instantaneously, and we get flooded with it, and half the time we don't know that it's just artificial intelligence. It's not reality.
Yeah.
We used to be able to believe what we see.
Picture was worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can't anymore.
Not anymore. Amen. So that's something to keep in mind.
Caution.
Cautionary tale. I'm going to say one other thing that we're going to dive in. It says, teachers of the law, or those that are translated as scribes, because again, I want to talk about who are we talking about here? Who is Jesus tearing into? They were the biblical scholars, qualified to read, write, interpret, teach, preserve, and apply Israel's scriptures and oral traditions to everyday practice. Yeah. So we good with who the Lord is speaking to? He's speaking to those who are in the know.
Who started out well?
They probably start, I really think they started out well-meaning. I would hate to think they didn't. But you know, this flesh is something else. It'll start making you think you're special. And as I told and have told many people, unless your name is Jesus, I'm not sure how special you actually are. All right, let's start diving in. Oh, I guess I kind of answered question number 1. Who were the scribes and the Pharisees? But let's just look at the second part. We talked about the role that they play. So the question is, the third part of question 1, how could or should they have been able to help the people? They didn't come in there wicked. What could or should they have been able to do? And remember, as those who are most familiar with the Torah or the law, they would know that the ground can open up
Zip.
and 20,000 of you were gone just like that. They would have known that fire can shoot out, that you have to, as the Lord himself said, before the assembly, I must be regarded as holy. And the implications in the Old Testament of not doing that is getting killed sometimes. So they would have known these things, and they probably not only not saying his name out loud at all, but they would know, let's approach the Lord with maximum caution. You want to be close to him. He says, draw near to me. But let's approach him with maximum caution, because he's a holy God.
Which explains why they put a layer of law around the law.
He's still a holy God. And just because we don't have to tie a rope around the pastor's waist, lest he get up there, not exactly, and fall over, and then we have to pull him off the altar, because like they used to have to do with the high priest. Just because we don't have to do that doesn't mean we should be jumping in front of the Lord, acting whichever way we think we want to, and in some often ways disrespecting him and his holiness. The Lord is still the Lord. He's still the Lord.
If they had stayed humble in their position, if they had stayed true to the Torah,
Yes.
then they would have helped the people. But because of their flesh,
Yes.
they became empowered.
Yes. So let me say it again, what she just said. She said if they had stayed humble before the people, if they had not allowed that flesh to get tickled and then they start giggling with pride. Let me say another thing I like about the Salvation Army. I didn't grow up in the Salvation Army, but I love this. I mean, I love this. I've said it 100 times. If you look at pictures of me in other organizations that I belong to where I serve in leadership roles, when they say take a fun picture, my fun picture is always this.
Yep, one God.
One guy.
No, to God be the glory.
Oh.
That's how I interpret it. I hope I'm interpreting this correctly.
Yep.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Not me, him.
Right? Not me, look to him. To God be the glory. Yeah. And so going to what Ellen said, had they not, because you know it's hard. When you're in charge of this or that or the third thing and it's a wide footprint and lots of people are running behind you trying to tell you how wonderful you are, whether it's big, whether it's small. It's hard to say, don't touch this flesh. So we have to be careful so that we don't, like the Pharisees who started off well, all of a sudden start slipping and sliding into some fleshiness. And you'd be surprised how subtle that can happen.
This comes at a perfect timing. I think this fits in. Because last night I was on the phone calling to get some more donations and such for plastic and chili auction. And I was feeling pretty proud of myself. And then I took a breath and I go, no, the Lord is doing this through me.
I love that.
Yes.
So I have to be careful Oh,
I love that.
I'm proud because the Lord's working through me.
Yes. I love that.
And I've only gotten one no.
Right.
So I told the Lord to work on that. That's one that will make a difference.
Right. But here's the thing that she's saying. First of all, she said, and I feel like that is such a grace of God that the Lord would just bring it to your mind. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
It's not you, it's me. Because if you have favor, that favor didn't come from you. You didn't put that up. I put that upon you, and that's why you're getting the response you're getting.
Because we got to raise $30,000.
And she paused, and she went from saying this, look at me, to, Lord, to you be the glory.
Isn't that fit and perfect for today's life?
I think it's perfect because it's so subtle.
And I understood it. It makes sense.
Right, it's so subtle how we could also start to say, look at me. I'm so great, I got this done. We can't even breathe if the Lord doesn't help us.
Yep.
So let's be clear. All right, let's keep going. So, what does Jesus say? This is something that's interesting to me. Look in verse 3. What does Jesus say to the multitudes? Because he's speaking to the multitudes and to his disciples regarding their teachings in verse 3. What does he say?
Practice and obey, but do not follow their.
So is he poo-pooing their teachings? Not really. He's not saying their teachings are toss them out.
He says pay attention to them.
He's saying pay attention to them, listen to them. But, so he's not poo-pooing the teaching. He's like, yeah, this hedge of protection might help you. Holiness is for everybody, even back in the Gospels. But he's saying, observe, well, therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do. But do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. Understand the teaching. Do it. But don't do it like they do it. They do it on the outside. And the Lord is saying you need to do it on the inside.
Yes.
And the outside. Okay, I think that's important because we might think he's tossing out their teachings along with them. He's not. He's like, okay, just make sure you don't do it how they do it. And so then in verse 4, what's the impact of their teachings on the people? Let's just look in verse 4. For they bind heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on men's shoulders. And so when I read this, the first verse that comes into my mind is, take my yoke upon you and learn of me, because my burden is light. It's not, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Where they're putting heavy burdens for others to bear. But the second part of that, about the underlying motivations, or well, before we get there, it says, but they themselves don't do it. Now let's look at the motivation, because only the Lord can see in the heart. But all their works they do to be seen by men. People like to be recognized, right? There's nothing wrong with recognizing good work. But you got to make sure that while you do whatever you're doing that the Lord is having you to do, it's not because you want to be seen by men. There's a difference. Nothing wrong with saying, great job. But if I'm doing the work simply so that you can see me doing it, that's a problem. It says they make their phylacteries broad and enlarge the borders of their garments. And so the phylacteries, they paraded their piety in public with praise, to win praise. The phylacteries were small leather cases which contained certain scripture texts, in which the Jews wore around their arms and their foreheads. The borders refer to the tassels that the Jews wore on the corners of their outer garments. So these are like these religious symbols of relationship. And so what he's saying is they're making theirs nice and big. So you can see. So if I came in here with a 27-inch cross around my neck, I want you to know I'm with the Lord. Right? only good if I actually mean it. And it says they love the best places at the feast and the best seats in the synagogues. Listen, I love to sit in the first class seat. I love when somebody says, hey, Cynthia, come sit here. But you don't do what you do to get that. There's a difference between someone being kind to you and your motivation for doing a thing to get that. And so I think that's that caution that Ellen said. For they love. I love the praise of men, but what we really need is the praise of God, that good and faithful servant, as opposed to what some man would say about you or woman. And it says, and they love the greetings in the marketplace and to be called by men, rabbi, rabbi, or, ooh, look at you, you're so smart. Teacher, teacher, let me give you some respect. Nothing is wrong with someone being respectful. I don't let my students call me Cynthia. I don't. I didn't grow up like that. They got to call me Professor Myrie at the very least. Okay? Because Cynthia doesn't work for me. But I don't make them to do that so it's like, oh, I feel so good about myself. I just feel like we need some boundaries. Okay? That's it. But there are others who may be like, okay, yeah, you got to call me a certain thing. And when you call me that, I start to feel so much bigger and better than everybody else. No. Unless your name is Jesus, and we're calling you Son of Man, Son of God, your title, your name is irrelevant. Okay. Let's dive in. Question number 4. We're going to dig into our table now that we've laid some context. In how many different ways does he characterize them, those who believe in holiness, those who believe in come out from among them, those who go to Bible study and know the Bible a little bit, a lot? In how many ways, those who wear the uniform or have one in the closet, in how many different ways does he characterize them in these verses?
7 verses.
I want to begin by talking about the word woe. The word woe is primarily an expression of grief. And I think that's interesting. The connotation from the word woe that he's using is grief. Grief. So the cry woe imitated the wail of mourners at the ancient Near Eastern funerals. And so it's not like a raging anger filled with revenge that we learned about the master in last week's lesson. So angry that this servant was so wicked. This is more like, you're breaking my heart. I'm grieved over your behavior. I'm in grief. I think that speaks volumes about the Lord and how wonderful he is. That even as he is assaulting them with these words, at the bottom of it is grief. You're grieving me. All right, let's look at the first characterization. In verses 13, 14, 15, 23, 25, 27, and 29. How does he characterize them?
Hypocrites.
Hypocrites. He characterizes them as hypocrites, and he characterizes their hypocrisy. And that word hypocrite means an expounder, interpreter of dreams, like an actor. It's what the Greeks used to call a stage player who acted under a mask impersonating a character. A counterfeit. A man who assumes or speaks or acts under a feigned character. What's interesting to me is that the last part of that is this word hypocrite also means a conjurer, a diviner. a guesser. But a conjurer? A diviner? I never want to be called that. So let's look in verse 13. Calls them hypocrites in verse 13. Why?
Because they're talking the talk and not walking the walk.
He says, you're hypocrites. You shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. You're putting up barriers, making it harder for others to come. But you don't go in yourself, and you're not allowing others to easily get in. You're putting up barriers. Do it in church all the time. Don't come to church unless you have on nylons and a dress.
Yeah,
I know, and make sure you wipe all the makeup off your face.
I've talked to people that don't go to church just because of that.
And you know what?
I
It's
don't have the
so
right clothes.
true. Do you know there are people, you know, we think people need the Lord. There are people today who will not enter churches because they feel like they don't have the right clothes. That's criminal.
They think they're not good enough. I have to clean my life up first.
Right. I can remember witnessing to a man who worked at Oakland with us, and I was telling him, Mr. Dan, you got to come on. And he's like, no, I got to get myself together first. I said, no, you don't. You need to come on as you are, and the Lord will deal with all of that.
Yeah.
But to put up a barrier that unless you have on a dress or pants or some fancy suit or some big hat or some nylons or some fancy shoes, you can't come to church.
I better go change. No, just go.
That is a barrier. And can I just say this? That barrier didn't start off as naughty as it's gotten.
Right.
In many cultures, because people didn't have very much, this idea of putting on the best you had was a symbol of respect.
It was. Yes. It was.
So for people who didn't have very much, it started off as, I want to show the Lord my best. And so that's why I dress up before I go to church. That's why I put on these fancy things. It becomes a barrier when your best doesn't look like my best, and I tell you don't come up in here because your dress is not as nice as my dress. I don't even realize this is the only dress you have.
Well, you brought it up, the uniform. That was the great equalizer. You know, the rich men of the congregation wore the same thing as my
Yes,
grandmother.
yes, absolutely. Okay, let's keep going. In verse 14, we're just on the hypocrites. It says, you devour widows' houses for a pretense, and for a pretense make long prayers. So I had to look this up. And so this idea of devouring widows' houses, it has a lot of layers to it. One of the layers is that it means that they would be taking or could be taking what the widows might have had or could have had to support them and their families. Think like the widow's mite. I come in here, I'm counseling you, I'm giving long prayers, but I'm really coming to take what teeny little bit you have, you know, and put it into the church. And if you don't put it into the church, to make you feel bad about it.
You think prosperity preachers?
Right. I'll take whatever you have. It said that they devour the families of widows or the means of supporting the families. And this they did under the pretense of counseling them in the knowledge of the law or the management of their estates. This is commentary. They took advantage of their ignorance, their unprotected states, and either extorted large sums or perverted the property for their own use. They took advantage of their ignorance. He says, you will therefore receive greater condemnation because you're preying on the weak. And we know that. In verse 15, we're still on hypocrites. You travel land and sea to win one what is that? Convert. And when he is won, you make him twice as much of a son of hell as yourselves. That is scary. So in other words, you are running around getting one person, and then rather than bringing them to the actual kingdom, to the actual pure and undefiled religion, you are manipulating, you are twisting, you are turning them into something that is not the Lord, something that has a form of godliness, but denies the power thereof. Yes, Ellen?
My commentary says the phrase child of hell was likely a Hebrew expression that referred to a particularly wicked person in contrast to people of the kingdom. Jesus bluntly accused the Pharisees who bragged about being righteous of being blatant sinners and hypocrites. Worse yet, they spread their false teaching and legalistic ways to those they recruited. They led people further away from God's truth by taking them deeper into human tradition.
Yes.
I wonder how the entire group that started out well, the entire group gets to be corrupt.
Yeah. And I would say that no matter what the group is, there's always a remnant, right? So I would suspect that it's not everybody. You still have the ones who are not swallowing this thing whole.
Nicodemus and Joseph.
Right. So, but this flesh, I think this is the lesson. This flesh is dangerous. Don't underestimate this flesh. If you feed it, it gets strong. And when you get stronger, it drives us right on down that primrose path of pride. When you feed this flesh, it gets stronger. And that leads us to pride. The lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. And then if you have other well-meaning people who are blowing fire, or blowing, oxygen into that fire called your flesh and the pride, it makes it even harder.
I'm curious, does anyone know if there was a leader?
A leader.
In order for you to get to that one mindset. I can understand somebody saying do this and people bowing and doing
Yeah.
it, but we're not told that there was a leader
Right.
who was indoctrinating or encouraging or
Yeah.
cajoling people.
So I would say that even without a leader, groupthink, which is a psychological phenomenon, is a very powerful kind of thing. So, like, sometimes you might see, you see it here too. One person plants an idea, they may not be the leader, but they plant the idea, and next thing you know, there's this whole, mob. Groundswell of, let's go kill, whatever. When I gave the original example, I was thinking about how in some countries, and I guess in this one now too, but in some countries, you have mobs that come together and want to fight against whatever they think is the wrong thing. It's not a leader, it's just a mob mentality. And I guess I can't say in this country now too, because this country's been doing that for a mighty long time.
Yeah, they're paying them to do it.
Right. All right, let's keep going. So, in verse 15, they're missionaries who create corrupt disciples. We're still on hypocrites. 23. You pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of law, justice, and mercy and faith. And so in this one, he accuses them of being so preoccupied with the details of the law that they've missed the foundational ethical principles. Hypocrites. In verse 27 and 25, that is speaking to you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside you are full of extortion and self-indulgence. So in my commentary, it says they pay detailed attention to the matters of pertaining to ceremonial cleansing, but ignoring God's demand for inner holiness.
That's good. I find it interesting that in Zechariah, when they're rebuilding the temple, they ask him to ask God, should we continue to fast and mourn? And God says, you're doing it for yourself anyway.
Yes.
Are you doing it for me or you're doing it for yourself?
Yes. Verse 27, where he talks about whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead man's bones and all uncleanness. You know, outwardly they seem righteous, but inside they were morally defiled. I wrote for myself for verse 27, dead bones don't begin as dead bones. They begin with rot and decay. So going back to what, some of you were saying, how did we get here? We don't get here as a dead man's bone. We get here by when the Holy Spirit is speaking to us and saying, stop it. I'll get it. It's right there.
I'll
Okay.
get it.
When the Holy Spirit is speaking to us, trying to correct us, trying to convict us, we hit the override button. Ah, la, 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 I can't hear you. And then he'll continue to try and help and guide and override, override, override. The conviction, the rod of chastisement, is to help us. And then eventually, over time, you keep hitting that override button and your heart of flesh can get more stony and it can get very difficult to find your way back. Okay, let's keep going. In verses 16 through 22, this is actually one thought. He calls them, and I'll just give the characterization, blind guys, fools, and blind. Okay, you know what? I have to go back for one moment. These dead bones in verse 27, he's actually not speaking to dead like I don't have life. It's talking about spiritual death. So please, in that commentary, that's not talking about, oh, I'm dead, I'm not breathing. This is like spiritual death. Dead men's bones are spiritually dead. But now he calls them fools. Now this word fool is stronger than raka. So it's like me saying the difference between I'm angry or I'm livid. I'm upset either way, but being livid or incensed is a stronger way of saying I'm angry. Likewise, this word that's translated as fools and blind is moros. But it's meaning someone who is morally worthless. Morally worthless. And it's stronger than the word raka. And so he calls them blind guides, fools and blind. In verse 16 through 22, my commentary says they were habitual liars, betraying their moral stupidity by having developed an elaborately absurd system of taking oaths that were binding and non-binding. We talked last week about what's at the bottom of a liar. The father of all lies. That's what's at the bottom of a liar. And here they are betraying their own stupidity, or as the words say, showing themselves as morally worthless by creating a system of taking oaths that are binding and non-binding, whatever that means. This word blind, which is the characterization in verse 25, I think this is very interesting. The word that's translated as blind here doesn't mean you can't see. It means that it is opaque. It is smoky. You're not seeing clearly. It's not like blind, like, Isaiah 61, arise, shine, the light is come. Remember, it's so dark you can't see anything. It's not that. It's speaking to there's an opaqueness. Your eyes are covered. You can't see clearly. You have the worst cataract on the earth. Right. You might be able to see a little something, but you can't really see. And so in verses 24 and 26, it says the Pharisees would carefully scrutinize their food, looking for a gnat to avoid being unclean, but were ingesting an equally obvious unclean camel. And I won't get into it, but the words that Jesus uses there, just I guess the Aramaic of the words, it's a play on words, so everyone knows he does not literally mean a camel. He's saying, you looking for this, but you're eating that. I didn't know a camel was also unclean. A camel is unclean. You shouldn't be eating a camel according to the law. Just like you shouldn't be eating a gnat, shouldn't be eating a camel. But they're like, you looking for the gnat, and here you are eating the unclean camel. In verse 27, we already talked about the whitewashed tombs. And then the last characterization is snakes and vipers. Verse 33. It says, for snakes and vipers, serpents, brood of vipers. I got to read this out the commentary. We'll end with this. Brood of vipers. It says, how can you escape the condemnation of hell? So for 33, the Sunday school commentary says, once again, Jesus repeated John the Baptist's accusation. So John the Baptist has also hurled this characterization upon them. Israel's religious leaders were vipers. His imagery reflects the popular assumption that the devious snake of Eden was in fact Satan. And so his rhetorical question implies that they could not escape being condemned to hell. They would share in the same catastrophic destruction prepared for the devil and his demons.
My commentary, which I really like this time, it says they exchanged holy for hollow.
That's good. I love that. I love the way that speaks to hypocrisy. And it also speaks to how we in 2026 can also be leaning into hypocrisy. We are called to holiness. But that holiness can become hollow to the extent that we have it focused solely on the outside and not inside of our hearts. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm switching gears, but I think it's of the spirit here. As a Salvation Army officer and an ordained minister, I was in charge of a $40 million budget and 700 employees from all over the world. Mm-hmm. So we had a lot of diversity, and we had a lot of different thought patterns and different things and so on and so forth. So I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm just going to make it simple for you and say guilty as charged on all 8 counts here. Because as you see folks who don't think like you, act like you, or believe in the same things you believe in, you tend, like the Pharisees probably did, to go toward this rule book and say, hey, you know, you're absolutely dead wrong here. So I think the closing line would be, pray for your leaders.
Yes.
Pray for the people who are in charge.
Yeah.
And it's like I say, if you can't pray for, just let me say, if you can't pray for the president, then pray about the president.
Yeah.
If you can't pray for your church leaders, then pray about your church leaders.
Yeah.
But it's very important that, you know, people who are in charge have some sense of connection and some sense of empathy with us, and sometimes it's the people on the ground level who have to initiate that
Yes.
discussion.
Yeah.
So I think not only praying for our leaders, but understanding that, you know, they've got our support even when they look like Pharisees and scribes.
Yes. Yeah. That's good. And that is a good closing thought. I think saying guilty as charged is also a good closing thought, because we could all pull the mirror. You know, I love to bring the mirror in. We can all pull that mirror and take a look at it and ask the question we asked last week. I hope I get it right, Ed. If upon my soul a trace
Of sin remaineth.
of sin remaineth. What's the rest?
If on my hands a stain may let it be seen. O wash me, Lord.
One dark thought, a weary mind
Retain
retain
it.
it.
O wash me, Lord, till every part is clean.
Yes! Let that be our prayer and meditation.
For I would live that men may see thyself in me, I will
with faith ascend thy holy hill, and with thy thoughts in tune with thy divinity.
learn the best.
Yes, even though it's not exactly what I'm going to say, but it translates a different way. But blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Let's close with prayer.